For my oral history project, I decided to speak with my great-aunt Phyllis and learn about what it was like for her to live in Boston as a Jew during the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Before interviewing her, I needed to learn about the history of Jews in Boston. In 1674, a Portuguese merchant was the first Jew to visit Boston, but it was not until the 1820s when non-Puritans were allowed to live in the city. Around the turn of the century, a large number of Jews moved to the Dorchester and Blue Hill area of Boston. The 1920s was a decade of prosperity. It was an age of jazz, freedom. People could express themselves in ways they never were allowed to before. The stock market crash of 1929 marked the abrupt end of one era and the start of a bitter new one. Unemployment rates skyrocketed, and before long, 1 in every 4 Americans had no job. With no jobs and no money, people were forced to stick together to survive. In the 1880s, my grandfather's grandfather, Nathan Tarlinsky, started a family in Dorchester.
When I grew up, there were houses on one side of the street, and on the other side of the street was Franklin Field. There were tennis courts. There was we called it the locker house. It was a big brick building and it had showers. It was a huge expanse, and there was a lot of amateur athletic activity going on there. In season, baseball, football, hockey. They would freeze part of the flood part of the field.
Oh, really?
And there was skating. And there was a playground. There were bowling greens. My mother worked. She was struggling. She wasn't a home mother because she had to work. And my grandmother had already brought up a big family, and she was the homemaker for the rest of us. Grandma worked in Fileen's. She worked in the women's corset department. She was a Cracker Jack sales lady. My Aunt Rose, the vegetarian, had a store, and my mother worked with her. And at one point, my mother had her own store in Codman Square area. And Uncle Eddie had his typewriter business, and Uncle Phil worked in real estate or wherever he could find jobs. Uncle Harry had the men's boys clothing store in Brookline. And at one point, Harry joined the CCC. My brother Edward hitchhiked out to the West Coast and joined the Army. Sugar was rationed, meat was rationed, and on the holidays the boys would take their handkerchiefs, spit on one end, put a stone there, make a knot and tie it up with the kids. Yeah. And slam each other on the hand. That was fun. We went to the movies, 10 cents clutched in our hand. There was the Franklin Park, and then the Morton Street movie, and then the very fancy Oriental Theater opened in Mattapan Square. And it had starlights, Periodically, a bunch of young kids would come from the non-Jewish part of the area on the other side of Franklin Field, and they'd come up on Franklin Field and throw stones down.
In the 20s, 30s, and 40s, being a Jew in Boston was not easy. But without family members, it would have been much harder than it was. I'm glad that I got to do this project because Phyllis taught me what it means to have a strong family and the true value of your family. While the events that happened can be recorded in any textbook, the lessons learned are only in our memories, and they only can be passed down through our words. That is the importance of this project, and why I'm thankful for Phyllis's generosity in passing these lessons down to me.
Ich spiel der Passer sein Potloi. Ois des Wief in Basarabie, in dem Passer fiel sein Trauer. Oh, in dem Passer fiel sein Trauer, in dem Passer fiel sein Trauer.